Right. So tonight we are joined by three folks who have all completed Code Louisville in the past. Oops, sorry, I lost my accidentally closed my tab here. So their bios are posted on the event, but I'm not going to sit here and read them to you. We're going to give them a chance to introduce themselves and tell you more about it. So tonight we're joined by Jake St. Germain, Shannon Beach, and Sean Offit. And like I said, we're gonna start with a few questions from me just to get to know them, and then we'll take it to a Q&A session where you all can ask whatever you're curious about. So jumping right into our very first question, just keeping it simple. If you all could each introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you're doing professionally today. So and there's no particular order here, so whoever wants to go, just take it away. Or I will call on somebody.
I'll start. I'm Jake St. Germain. Currently, I work for Health Catalyst. I applied for a front-end internship, and that is not what I got. I am full stack, creating API endpoints, managing and playing around in SQL databases, and editing our front-end application. And I'm just in love with it.
Right, I'm Shannon Beach, I'm a software engineer at Disney Streaming. I am innovating and leading the tooling team that is used to build tools to test the video player that is used on Disney Plus, ESPN Plus, Hulu, Star Plus, and whatever brands we come out with in the future.
And I'm Sean, Deshaun Offit. I work at Virtual Peaker as a software engineer. My primary role is documentation and creating Vue components for our library. What we do is create software for managing electricity from batteries to power plants, thermostats, those type of things to maintain the efficiency and help power plants. Pretty much everyone saves some money down the line. I enjoyed my job. I actually got my job through a mentor from Code Louisville. So I strongly advise networking.
Yes, hopefully that's one of the themes of the night. And you all will have a chance to dive more into what they do in their day-to-day job if you're curious about that. Just be keeping those questions in mind for a few minutes from now. So the next question is if you all could just talk a little bit about what you all did before Code Louisville, professionally, what you were interested in, what you were doing, if you went to college, what you studied, anything like that. And then what led you to become aware of Code Louisville and then apply for it and then just get started in the program. You just keep the same order. So Jake. Oh,
yeah. So I was a ICU nurse for 5 years, mostly pediatric, but some adult during COVID. I applied for Code Louisville a little bit before COVID hit and then started doing Code Louisville throughout all of COVID. I was introduced to Code Louisville by some buddies who did Code Louisville and found success. And nursing was slowly becoming incompatible with just existing. So like I worked every Thanksgiving and Christmas for the last 5 years. And I decided to follow a passion of mine and enroll in Code Louisville. And now here I am.
All right, my story goes all the way back to high school, I guess. I was into graphic design. I had taken a graphic design class through the technical school that we had access to. Didn't really know much about computers, but kind of wanted to learn. But anytime I was asked, my teachers were kind of like always pushing me off of it. So I just went the graphic design route after high school into college. Got exposed to programming there, did some website programming and some Flash programming. So that's how long ago this was. Flash was still popular. Fell in love with it, decided to switch majors. So went into a computer science degree, had some financial aid problems. So I left. I had to leave college. Still did some stuff on my own, found some programs online, some Microsoft stuff. Worked some very crappy warehouse jobs all while I was doing that just to get by, and then watched The Social Network. So this movie actually changed my life. because if Mark Zuckerberg could go to Harvard and drop out and found a company, I was determined that I did not need a degree and I was at least going to get a job. So I got lucky, I guess, and found a small architect firm that needed a administrative assistant, but they also wanted somebody with tech skills to help update their website and fix a very expensive program they bought and didn't know how to run, and a few other things. And so I was doing that. And as part of the administrative part of that job, I had to look through Business First and read, so like try to find them leads for like work. And there was an article in there about Code Louisville. And this was 7 years ago, maybe, right after Obama came to town and the news did a story and everybody was talking about it. And like I'd seen it on the news, but hadn't really paid too much attention to it. And then this article pops up on my desk and I'm like, okay, fate is trying to tell me something here. This is like the step that I need. This is the gap that I'm missing, trying to like build stuff on my own and figure out how to get like a better paying job doing this. So I enrolled in the program, and that led to an internship at GE, which led to CBS, which led to Disney.
Let's see. I pretty much grew up around gaming, just like with Shannon. I pretty much all started in high school. We had a class, computer science, like cohort, if you will, part of the school. It was heavy technology based. And I went to the after school activities for LAN parties and such when those were a thing. And they also taught programming, and that's kind of like how I got like somewhat like introduced to it all. I'm formerly a carpenter. I did not start off into the IT industry, even though I had like the skills. I was the IT of the family. But eventually I had the opportunity of learning about Code Louisville when I was working on a machine, and my parents, they hit me up saying, you know, just like, as Shannon mentioned, when the Obama came around and supported all of this, and it was my time to like dive in. It was like, do or you missed it. And, you know, I took that ticket, and I loved every moment of it. I've been part of Code Louisville since 2016, albeit not active that much. 5 years in courses, that's all a lot, but it's been awesome. I loved every moment of it. It's definitely grown a lot. I'm so glad that a lot more people will get to get the opportunity to participate in this, and I hope everyone also gets to reap the benefits. You know, you the more work you put into it, the more you get out of it, and it's what I say. But yeah, after graduating from my first two courses back in 2016 from front end and JavaScript, I didn't immediately get an IT job, but I did more or less get into doing scripting at my warehouse jobs. When I was a chemical operator, they wanted me to do some like minuscule stuff. So I kind of used that on the side, and eventually it went from warehouse all the way up to becoming IT for Norton Healthcare. And then that evolved into me becoming a technical consultant for Sprint, and just kept evolving and more until eventually I got into my engineering job here at Virtual Peaker last year. I think it was more or less when I was doing my Python class. After graduating from that, my mentor, I kept talking with him, and like I was really interested, and he got me pulled in. Surprisingly enough, most of the engineers at Virtual Peaker are mentors for Code Louisville. So, and we do have a lot of internship programs very active. So if you're interested, I highly recommend you look more into it. But that's my story.
All right, thanks everybody. So now we're up to Code Louisville. So if you could talk a little bit about your experience with the program. You know, did you excel at it? What did you find difficult or interesting? You know, did you have any stumbles throughout the process? Just anything like that that you can share.
So I did the front end, I did JavaScript, and I did C#. And then I started Android when I got my job and realized I couldn't drink from two fire hoses. So I decided to go with the job. And then eventually I'd love to continue doing Android. So where was I going with that? uh, Code Louisville, the biggest challenge that I had was just managing the full-time nursing job during COVID and doing Code Louisville. Luckily, it all seemed to click. I had fantastic mentors through all of Code Louisville. And they were there for me. And if I had any trouble, they helped me. I just put in a lot of work, and here I am now.
All right, so I did front end, an Android, then half of PHP. It was summer and I'd been injured the summer before, so I ended up dropping out to like actually enjoy summer. And then went back that fall and did C#. I already had the internship at GE. Got that in like May, right before the PHP cohort started. So it contributed to my reasons to not continue the PHP cohort. I talked a lot to the mentors, asked a lot of questions, a lot of questions in class, a lot of questions on Slack. If I was stuck, I didn't hesitate to like reach out and say, hey, this is what's going on. Can you guide me in the right direction? Did a lot of extra on my own, but I had the time. Like I said, I had been injured, so I had nothing but time at the time to just sit and write code all day. And that's pretty much what I did. And then just kept learning after that. And when I got the internship at GE, just soaking up as much knowledge as I possibly could. And the same at CBS, which led to Disney, is just asking questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. If you don't understand, you know, everybody asks questions, even senior engineers are asking questions. You may not see it, but they are. And that's what got me through.
For me, I graduated from at least 5 courses from Code Louisville, that being front end, full stack JavaScript, Python, C#, and UX, which was recently introduced within the past 2 years, I believe. But my motivation, especially in the early stages, was when Becky Still was here. I was heavily getting hit with like imposter syndrome. You know, like JavaScript was beating me. I did not understand it back then, but it's like my top skill now. But like the student coordinator, even Brian, Becky, and Shannon Siders, they were all motivation to keep us all going. It was really awesome. I went to it was a gaming event. I can't remember. It's like right across the street on 4th Street. But that's where I met like some other former Code Louisville graduates, and they were like game devs and stuff. That was just seeing how their success and like them talking to me and pulling me to the side, you know, it all just came all together and just pretty much helped me get to where I am today. So yeah, just as Shannon says, you know, ask questions, all the information is around you. If there's one thing I learned from Code Louisville is learning how to get the answers you need to, you know, get your objective polished or where it needs to be. Sorry. But yeah, keep asking questions, collaborate definitely, and network.
Just a quick follow-up on that one for you all. What did your projects, can you talk about some of your projects you did in Code Louisville? Like what were the subjects, or, you know, what did you build for your portfolio?
My first one for front end was just a landing page for myself, which I'm working on redoing in Angular with an API, some endpoints that I can hit. It's funny because it's called Jake API. And then for JavaScript, I used Poke API and did a Pokemon team builder. And then I decided to keep using Poke API because I was familiar with it from my C#, and I built a terminal Pokédex in C# for my project.
All right, my front end project was a classic cartoon hub. So it would pull information about all the classic cartoons, Scooby-Doo, Flintstones, Smurfs, Jetsons, because, you know, they're all owned by like different companies. So they're never together on the same streaming service. At least they weren't back then. And it linked to YouTube videos, and it had like little game cards where it would ask a question and then you'd like click it and it'd flip over and give you the answer, trivia type stuff. And it even had some audio in there where it'd play the theme song. There's a video of it out there on YouTube somewhere, and if you find it, I do apologize. I was on pain pills at the time, and it sounds like I was on pain pills at the time. But I tell people that because I go back and I look at that project and I'm like, I wrote that on pain pills. What can I do sober? Like, so that's my how far I've come story. The next project was Android. It used Google API and got your location and gave you like facts on what to do if you came across a stranded beach animal, like a dolphin or a whale or something. It gave facts on what to do and connected to the local like animal services who you could call and like get help, and it would give you your exact location, because if you're out on the beach you don't know your exact latitude and longitude, and that matters to save time to get to the animals. PHP I didn't even get to a project, and C# was all about Bigfoot. So it connected to like a Bigfoot conference and pulled in facts about Bigfoot and like displayed the dates and had some pictures that I found online of people who've said they've taken pictures of Bigfoot. And so, yeah, so all of my projects have been kind of out there, I guess. Like they all speak to me, definitely. They're part of my personality. And I've been asked about them at interviews, and it's gone well. People are interested. They're like, so tell me about this Bigfoot project, or tell me about this beached animal project, or let's talk about this cartoon thing. And anytime I've been asked about it, I've gotten the job offer. So it's worked out for me. So when people want to know what to build, I'm like, just build whatever you're interested in. Run with it.
With or without pills?
Do it without.
The video that Shannon mentioned is in chat too now, if anybody wants to go listen to Shannon on pills.
People have hunted it down in the past. Like I said, it was out there and they've hunted it down, and then they're like, whoa. So like now I have to explain that there were like circumstances around that. Okay.
Sean?
Yep. For me, my first project was actually for a game developer. I initially got into Louisville with the belief that I wanted to give back to the gaming industry. And so I know that there's game developers who know how to, develop video games, but they don't know anything about design or websites at that. So I found one that was like quite awful. It's just pictures of text and stuff. It's really bad. So I redid it in Ember.js actually, with an API, with even a fan mail section so that the developer can get it. I eventually refactored that later on when I ended up learning more skills, but that was my initial project. And my second one was actually an Animal Crossing application. If any of you know what that is, a video game about animals made by Nintendo with some good music. And the main purpose was to replicate the music. There's a unique song for each hour, and it changes on the weather and stuff like that. And I was like, that's awesome. And I made a web application that replicated the exact same thing. It's technically live today, but the API is down because MongoDB swapped over. But yeah, that was pretty much my passion project. I worked on that for a couple of years. And then I used that at an interview, and they saw my skills and they wanted me to just do something. They basically asked me to surprise them. And I pretty much just made an elevator app, and they told me they've never seen anyone do that before. It's like a literal elevator. You push the buttons, you see it do the animations and stuff. It's pretty cool. But just do whatever comes to your mind. You don't necessarily need to do what everyone else is doing, especially for their first application. I know it's very common to do apps. It doesn't necessarily have to have a purpose, but it's a lot more easier to figure out something that you would like an app to solve, more or less, or something you would like to see and put it out there. And who knows, it might grow into an actual project or a business, if even. You never know.
All right. So I've got one more question I'm going to ask, and then after that, I will start opening it up to the questions you all want to know. So be thinking about those. You can go ahead and start sending them to me in chat or post them publicly. and I'll do my best to get them in order as I can. If I miss anything, just let me know. But my last question before opening it up to the room is whatever you all consider your first big break in tech, whether that's the first job after Code Louisville or one you got later. Can you talk about how you found that opportunity? Was it networking? Were you applying? Was it through a job you already had? Something like that. And just what did that process look like to getting that first big break into the tech industry?
So my first job is the one I have right now. And I applied for about 50 different jobs. I saved it all in Google Doc or Drive. I'll have to look at it. And some of them I got because through networking, like some of the I did interview a couple of times. Some of the interviews I got because I did know people or a Code Louisville mentor or my sister. But the one that I ended up getting right now, I decided to expand a little bit outside of Louisville and try for a remote. So I just opened it up to just clicked remote, I think, on LinkedIn when I was looking at jobs, and Health Catalyst popped up out of Salt Lake City. So I applied for their internship. And what that looked like was I got an interview. Then we did some like basic whiteboarding stuff. Do the was it an anagram? Not the anagram. The word same way, front or back, return true. What is that word? The word for the
palindrome.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a palindrome detector, return true or false. And then they ended up giving me a coding challenge, gave me a week to do, which was way harder than I thought it'd be. Build a front end application using a JavaScript framework and a web use a web API and submit it. So I did that, learned Angular, which was incredibly easy to do because I already knew so much from Code Louisville with JavaScript. And because I knew C#, I was able to use web API, submitted it, got another interview, did another whiteboarding challenge, got the job. And now I make more as an intern than I did as a nurse. Isn't that crazy?
Crazy is one word for it.
All right, so I guess my first legitimate job would have been the internship at IT or at GE, because it paid more than any job I had ever had in the past. The job was posted in the job channel on Slack, and Becky Steele, I don't even know if she remembers this, but she actually pinged me on Slack and was like, hey, just want to make sure you saw this. I think you'd be a good fit for it. I was on my way to a meetup, and luckily I had my resume saved in Google Drive, and I pulled over into an Arby's parking lot and filled out the application right there in the parking lot and uploaded my resume, and then went to the meetup, didn't think anything else about it. Got a call the next day. They were in a hurry to interview because this was right at the time where they were being bought out by Higher, and they wanted to get somebody started before all of that was finalized. So the first interview was at 9:30 at night, and I was in my pajama pants and a t-shirt, and it was over the phone, and they were asking me what I did to de-stress, and I started talking about taking a bubble bath, and I thought for sure I had blown it, but they actually loved that answer. They told me they loved that response, that I was totally honest, and they appreciated that. So that was the first big break, I guess. It led to everything else. And the first time I really felt validated or really I had really made it was when I started getting messages on LinkedIn from recruiters without actually looking for a job. They started messaging me, wanting to know if I was available. They saw the stuff I posted. They saw the work I was doing at GE and at CBS, and what would it take to get me to leave? And I didn't leave until I got one from Disney. That's actually how I got that job. I did not apply. The recruiter found me, and it took me a minute to actually realize that this was a legitimate message from a recruiter from Disney, because I was like, oh wow, holy crap, this is a recruiter from Disney, this is big. Hyperventilated for a minute, then decided that somebody was trolling me because like my dream had always been to work for Disney ever since I was a little kid. So then I was like, this isn't real. There's no way this is real. Somebody is trolling me, but it was legitimate. And I messaged her back and we had conversation. And that interview process was a dream. Okay. Like I met with the hiring manager, just general conversation about tech and the problems they were solving and what they were using and how I could help. Then met with his manager, the VP of tech, more kind of behavioral stuff. Like, did I want to work remote? Had I been remote? How is that going? How did I adjust it to COVID? Because I started at Disney in January. So it's like, how did I adjust it? Did I want to stay remote? Like, how did I like what kind of workflow did I have with Git? And how did I like to work with that kind of behavioral stuff? And then it was a take-home assignment, which was so like this assignment was made for me, y'all, I swear. It was using the HTML5 video player API to build a video player, take in some data from them that they had given me through an API and make this player play these videos in order as a playlist. And like that had been everything I'd been doing at CBS. They didn't want a framework on it. There's restrictions with working with smart TVs and you can't always use a framework or a library. So it's purely vanilla JavaScript. They asked me to give a time estimate and then I had up to a week to do it. And I had it done in about 3 days. And then we met at a panel interview and I sat down with 3 of them and showed them the project up and running and walked through the code and talked about the decisions that I had made. And then we talked about my mentoring with Code Louisville and a few other things I was involved in. And at the interview, I felt great. 15 minutes later, I got a call and they offered me the job. And I hyperventilated again, y'all, on the phone, like, oh my God, yes, like didn't even have to think about it. So yeah, that's when I really, really felt validated. That's the validation job.
John?
Let's see. My first position that I got after coming out of Code Louisville was the IT for Norton Healthcare position. It was mostly because they saw my aptitude and my skill set of being able to learn already, let alone me already having IT knowledge freehand from my old school days. And that eventually rolled over, as mentioned before, into me becoming a technical consultant. They seeked me out via LinkedIn after my contract had ended at Norton. I had to make a decision between either staying in the healthcare industry or moving over. So I did with Sprint. There, I got to utilize some of my scripting skills to create a more or less a tracker for improving customer experience and callbacks and such. It was my first experience with VBA, actually. Quite interesting how they how old it is, really. And eventually I traveled off to Europe, more or less, to go visit my family there. And in between those times, I see the main handicap for me getting into the actual software industry in itself was because I purely only wanted a remote position. I've seen so many remote videos, so many influencers, people who have made it, and there's a term that they use and it stuck with me as being a suitcase dev, and that sounds pretty awesome to me. And yeah, well, eventually I did get it because thanks to going through a Python course and being able to meet up with Graham, who was a worker at a Virtual Peaker. But before that opportunity, I was originally an administrator at CEVA Logistics, who originally pulled me in to become an operator. But during the last minute, during the onboarding, one of the higher ups saw my resume and they pulled me up to the front and they said, what are you doing out there? So they had some long talks with me for a couple of days and like what I could rather be doing than being on a machine. And they liked my attitude and pulled me in. And from there, I ended up creating a financial application or a financial matrix, which helps worry about invoicing and such. It was pretty hefty. That's when I got to excel at, again, with VBA and eventually building it out into a beta web application to this point. And that is what helped me get into Virtual Peaker. I didn't have any code tests. I didn't have any whiteboards or anything like that. It was just purely multiple interviews, voice and video, and eventually meeting up with them in an alley, more or less, which is where our office is. Yeah, it's been awesome. They're very much worth it, and I love every minute of it.
All right, so we're going to open it up to the questions that are coming in. Pretty much just going to go mostly in the order that I've been receiving them. And for our panelists, this doesn't have to be an everybody answers every question. So if you have something to respond with, speak up. If you don't, no worries. Some of these are open-ended, some of these are very direct. So short answers, long answers, whatever it takes, whatever feels necessary. So if you're trying to look good to an employer, what kind of project do you recommend?
Something you can speak about passionately. Like I have a project that's about Scooby-Doo, and I've been asked about it. I have one about George Lucas, and I've been asked about that too. And I've rambled what I felt was probably way too long, but again, they loved it. So anything that you can speak passionately about, you're probably going to speak more passionately about something that you care about over a basic to-do app. So it doesn't have to be reinventing Facebook or Twitter, as long as you have the passion behind it to talk about it and like show them your enthusiasm and what you built and like features, and then go into how you would expand it and all of that. That is what employers want to see. They want to see that passion.
I could not agree more. My Pokemon projects and Daft Punk soundboards and all random stuff on my GitHub came up in multiple interviews, and as I was enthusiastic about it and I was able to speak to it.
Yep, I also agree on that. Pretty much any project you have, especially if it's on your resume, they will ask you about it. And it's a bad look if you have something you can't speak about, more or less. And, and a follow-up to that is also, if you have the skill set, or more or less, if you have the willingness, create a SaaS, a software as a service application. Being able to create something like that, especially it enforces you to learn about architecture and make a lot of decisions and start thinking about the actual user, if you will. Having that mindset in itself is already like a huge achievement, and they like to see that in people.
Two kind of related questions, I'm sorry, unrelated questions, but first of all, somebody new to the program, if you met somebody, what advice would you have for them coming new into the Code Louisville program?
Take notes.
There are no stupid questions.
There are no stupid questions, and take notes.
Were you all paper note takers or electronic, or no notes at all? Or
No,
What's
I
nice-
tell all my students don't write it down, because everything changes so quickly that you're going to have outdated information in a couple months. Don't spend your time writing it down. Learn how to Google. That's going to be what's going to help you the most. Learn how to Google it. Bookmark your favorite resources. Learn how to Google. Do not waste time writing it down.
Unless that is your learning style, which is me. I learn best by taking information in and putting it somewhere else. So like, I don't often go over all my notes, but recognize your learning style and act on that.
I also would tap onto that. It's I took heavy notes using what was it, Microsoft Notes. I can't remember what it's called right now, but I like organized it heavily, especially within my first 2 years, the first three cohorts, if you will, JavaScript front end, and then .NET. It's just like just having that organization, it did help. And then more or less what I took notes on was not necessarily the content itself, but it's more so the things that seem to be common themed. Yeah, OneNote, thank you. The fundamentals, that is what you need to master. Know what your end goal is, and then try to either find like set or pre-made career trees, or more or less like paths to see what skills you need to get in that industry. Back in the day, I know Code Louisville used to have one, or at least we used to share one around. If I find it again, I'll post it in the channel somewhere. But it was very extensive, and it helps you know where you need to go. But at the end of the day, is master the fundamentals, the bare basics of what it is to program or to be a data analyst, or more or less. That is what's going to help you be able to translate your skills in between whatever framework or whatever it is that you're going to be touching at the end of the day. But yeah.
And then another question from the same person is, are the skills learned in here relevant to game development and game design? Do you think that they can cross over and help you out there?
Absolutely. If C# and Unity is wildly helpful. And there are a couple of different, if you were to take Android development, there was a couple of things I was looking at to develop my app. It's literally Flappy Bird. So just input, tap, go up. So absolutely.
It depends on what platform your game is running on. JavaScript may run it if you're running it in the web. If you're running it on a mobile device, you could be running it in NativeScript, which is JavaScript, and then it compiles down to either Swift or Kotlin or Android. Or depending on how graphic heavy your game needs to be, then you're going to use Kotlin or Java for Androids, or C Swift for iOS, C++ for Xbox and PlayStation. But yes, the skills you are learning will most definitely transfer over and help you get into that industry. Just know that industry is brutal. They don't really hire full time. You get hired on a per project basis if you're trying to go to one of the big game companies. My degree was actually in game development, so it can be pretty brutal. And there are people who move around and bounce back and forth across the country 3-4 times a year, sometimes more. A lot of people get out of it because they want to settle down and have families, and bouncing around like that's not really like conducive for a family.
And little known fact, if you've played Terraria, that's actually based right across the river in New Albany.
I did not know that.
And they're occasionally hiring.
What's the name of that company?
Terraria is developed by
I can look it up. That's all right.
yeah.
Chucklefish, or is this somebody else?
No, they not Chucklefish, Relogic.
Okay.
All right, so next question. Whoop, I lost my place here. Was sent to me in a private message. So I'm going to kind of genericize this question, so it's relevant to everybody. So somebody who's new to this and preparing for the interview process, how can they prepare for the interview? What types of questions might they expect to be asking that first interview? And then specifically for this person, if you have any front end specific advice, they'd appreciate that as well.
The best thing you can do is reach out to someone at the company and find out what kind of interview they're actually going to do. Like, I helped interview at CBS, and we did not do leak code interviews. And we interviewed a couple candidates who anticipated a whiteboard leak code interview, and it was very awkward when they didn't get that. And if they had discussed with their recruiter or had reached out to someone at the company and asked a few questions, they would have known that that was not going to happen. So that is the best way to prepare, I guess. And then practice. You can Google basic junior front end dev questions, and you don't even need a technical person to practice with. Give them to your best friend, your mom, your significant other, your sister, your brother. Have them read you the question and just practice answering it. Just get into the mode of just being able to answer the technical question. And they can tell you if you sound nervous, if you were rambling, if you were stumbling, the basics like that. And then if you want more practice, there are plenty of people on the Louisville Tech Slack who love to help people interview, and they just reach out on there. Say you want to set up like a mock interview, you need some practice, and somebody will respond and have some time to practice with you and give you more of that technical feedback.
And to kind of bounce on that, a lot of outside of the technical stuff, a lot of the interview is just seeing how compatible you are in a team and how well you work with others, because that's the number one thing. You can have a soft understanding of the content going in, but if you work well with the team, know how to answer, ask questions in the interview, you are much more likely to get the job. I did like 5 or 6 whiteboarding interviews, I think, and not one of them required code to compile or to actually present anything. You had to roughly show your thought processes, know a method or two, know how to like use interfaces, or most importantly, ask the question like, hey, I don't quite know how to do this in C#. Do you know, or is there anything I can learn? Or yeah.
I'd also like to follow up. Yeah, culture is more or less important, especially depending on what industry and or company you're applying for. Your adaptability is very important for cooperation and networking or collaborating within the teams. But also on top of that, when they ask you why are you interested in the company and stuff like that, you need to like be able to say like something. It helps a little bit. It goes a long way because it helps not only do they ask questions like just make sure you're like passionate or knowledgeable of your skill set, but they also see it's like if you actually look into the company, if you actually see what they are creating, and if you are actually interested in doing those things, or if you're just there trying to get a paycheck, more or less. Those how you speak and how you act goes a long way in their interview. Be outside of whiteboarding, which more or less also helps. Because I know in whiteboarding, or not counting leak code, that is leak code is like, can you remember certain algorithm structures, or do you know how to do like some drastic things with whatever language you're doing. It's just being able to see how you're able to think. What is your process? Sometimes they want you to speak out loud to see you might say get to the wrong answer, but they can see that your process was getting you close more than enough, and it just shows your can't figure out the word potential. There it is. That's what it is. It comes down to.
And ask clarifying questions. If they give you some type of technical problem to solve or a take-home challenge and they send it to you, ask clarifying questions. They want to see that you're going to ask questions. Some people will actually reject you off the bat if you do not ask a clarifying question, because many times when you're on the job, you're going to get a ticket. It's going to be vague. You're not going to be sure what to do with it. So you can guess and implement the wrong thing, or you can ask 2 or 3 clarifying questions and then come up with a solution. So always clarify what they mean.
I could not agree with that more. For the one that I actually got, they wanted me to implement a loading bar, and all they said was implement something that looks like it's loading. So I was like, I could just use set timeout, or I'm not quite sure what that means. So I asked, and then they actually gave me more instructions. Like that was apparently planned.
On the topic of interviews, did you ever have any terrible interviews? Did you ever bomb an interview, anything like that?
Oh yeah.
I had a couple, and the companies will remain nameless, but there was one, they asked questions that should not have been asked, like illegal type questions, like about my family. And they tried to gauge it in a way where they were trying to get around that, but I caught on pretty quickly what was going on and was like, I don't want to work here. But I didn't know how to end the interview. So I just kind of played it out and then just hope that I did not get an offer. And thankfully I didn't. So I didn't have to turn that down because I really needed the experience at the time. And then the other one, it was a panel interview, and one of the guys started asking me SQL questions. And then one of the other guys was like, why are you asking her questions you don't even know the answers to? And things got really awkward after that. And they went back and forth for a couple minutes and then started asking me more questions. And like, I don't want to work here. And I actually had the guts to tell them that at the end, was like, thank you, but I don't believe I'm going to be a good fit here. And just went on about my day. So yeah, I've had a couple really odd, bad ones.
The one that sticks out the most to me was I was applying for a like what's the word, contractor type thing. So you're employed by the company and then they fit you in different places for different roles for different lengths of time. I applied for a junior job. When I actually got to the interview, I was like ready for it and everything, and the guy somehow thought this was a senior dev interview. So I knew nothing about Vue. I knew nothing about like Dart or all this other stuff that he was asking me, and I was just sitting there panicking, like this is a junior level intern or a junior level job. And then eventually they emailed me back after 2 days of imposter syndrome saying, oops, do you want to come back and try this again? And I did, and it went better.
I just wanted to follow up on that. It's just most of my bad interviews is more or less is like when I was given questions that had like was way beyond the scope of an intern or outside of the position in itself. Like I got hit with some SQL and some PHP questions, even though it wasn't initially on the application type of things. But otherwise, most interviews like pretty much went smoothly. You come out like with confidence, like with a big smile, like, man, that felt good. But like, you always get the copy paste email saying, we loved you, but we found somebody else with more experience type of things. Yeah. So just look out for that stuff.
So we're getting tons of questions, and I'm putting a hard cap of 7:30 on this. So I will try and do my best to cover as many of them as I can. But if I skip your question, I apologize. I'm just trying to curate things to be as relevant to as many people as possible. So how did you choose what tracks you participated in, or what would you recommend with somebody considering what class they're going to sign up for in Code Louisville?
Ooh, I got this. So I chose JavaScript because I was absolutely fascinated by it. And then I really wanted to do JavaScript too, because at the time that was what was offered. And I was super excited about it because I was like, I want to do front end. I want to do front end. And JavaScript 2 ended up not being offered. So I took C#, and I am so thankful that I did, because that's one of the ways that I was able to get the job that I have now, just the fundamental understanding of APIs and building one. So my track was purely by luck, and it worked out. So be open to this class that I wanted wasn't open, but this sounds interesting too.
All right, so tracks weren't even a thing when I was in Code Louisville. Like you took front end and had some JavaScript and front end, and then you took C# or maybe Android or Swift or whatever else was offered. So it wasn't even a thing. So I didn't really have a choice. Like I just kind of took what was offered. I didn't really decide which way I wanted to go until I was working at GE, and like I knew JavaScript on the front end, but I wasn't really even feeling it that well. And I was like, I don't know about this. I don't know about this. But then I was working on the Alexa skill for them and found out that it was written in JavaScript. And that changed my whole perspective on what JavaScript could do. So I started learning more about JavaScript and became a JavaScript engineer, I guess. So that set my path there. So there's a whole lot you can do with JavaScript that is not front end centric. You can do Node, you can do video player stuff is all vanilla JavaScript. If you want to get into media, Alexa skills can be written in many languages, but they push JavaScript. Google Actions can be many languages, but they push JavaScript. So that kind of set the path for me and like what I was going to do. If you're torn on what to do, if you like to see instant gratification, front end, because you get that instant gratification, if it's got hot reloading, it reloads instantly and you see your changes, or you like refresh and you see your changes. If you don't really care about seeing pretty things, you just want to work with some data, back end. And if you want to do both, become a JavaScript engineer and you'll be both. And it's everywhere and there's always jobs available. So that's the way.
Yeah, in today's Go Louisville, there's a lot more courses available versus what we had back then. It really depends. Again, know where you want to go as an engineer. Whether that, again, front end, back end, actual applications, a data analyst, even like if you want to get into data, I recommend Python. That's what I use. If you want to get into like actual applications like Microsoft or things on your computer, if you will, go with .NET. Otherwise, again, JavaScript pretty much is like the introduce. It's like you're dipping your finger in pretty much everything if you do JavaScript. But again, know what you want to do. If you want to do design or something customer related, there was UX and stuff. I don't know if that stuff is still available, but I would hope so. If not, there's plenty of resources out there to get you going until like the next cycle comes around. But yeah, that's what I recommend.
Yeah, and if you don't know, it's okay. I mean, start off in front end, see how you like it. You may get a job working in front end, an opportunity comes up, and now you're doing some back end work. And then another opportunity comes up and you're working on an app. And another opportunity comes up and now you're in the cloud doing other stuff. So it's going to change. It may change, or you may really like front end or really like writing APIs and that's what you do forever, or it changes and your career grows. So there's no wrong path to take.
Yeah. Oh, and just hammering on that, I said that like going back, it's like the fundamentals is what it comes down to on that path. And just because you learn one language here doesn't necessarily mean like your job that you end up landing more or less will utilize that. For one, I learned React, here in Louisville. Well, at Virtual Peaker, I'm doing Vue and Angular, which I had no idea about, but like those skills, being able to adapt them over, that's what made it a lot more easier for me, more or less.
So kind of related to some of the, Sean, you brought this up a little bit of data analytics, but several people have asked about data analytics. So I'm going to combine their questions into one, which is, what can you share about the field and any advice on how to get into the data analytics field?
I do know that field is heavily competitive because I know sometimes a data analyst can get paid more than a software engineer, depending on where you are. It's a very, very powerful field because data is today's market, more or less. I can't really speak too much on it. It was something I honestly was pursuing in the early stages, and then I just got streamlined into like game development and like applications, more or less. So yeah, sorry, I can't say any more on that.
All right.
Yeah, I don't know a lot about it either. Sorry, can't answer that one.
Yeah, there's a little bit of similarity of your all's backgrounds for this panel discussion today. Maybe future one, maybe I'll try and get like a data analyst and a .NET developer or something like that. Question for Shannon. Any chance of the old school Disney cartoons coming back?
Yes, it's a process. So the videos, they were recorded like however far we're going back, 70s, 80s, 90s, but they have to be re-encoded to run on different platforms. And that takes time. And then they have to have the subtitle tracks have to be written and recorded, and all of the other accessibility stuff that goes into that, the transcripts and stuff have to be done in all of the multiple languages that the platform supports. So it's a process and it takes time, but yes, eventually. And there's a spot on the app to request stuff if you want to.
Internships. So this is maybe something I can add on a little bit, but I'll let you all tackle it first. So how do they work? What does it require to get an internship? What's your experience with them? And do you need one? Just whatever you have to add on internships.
So internships, at least for me and how mine's looking like it's going, is a great way to get in with a company and at least fulfill that dreaded thing on the application that says 1 to 2 years experience. Because a software engineer intern is years of experience. I am currently in an internship that's going to potentially turn into an FTE. I'm waiting for an email on that, which is super exciting. Are they needed? I don't think so. But if you find yourself applying for junior development jobs like I was, and you're not having any luck, try for an internship. The internship that I got and am now finding success in was originally designed. Is anyone familiar with like University of Louisville Speed School of Engineering?
Mhm.
So they do class and then co-op, class, co-op, class, co-op. The job I got was designed for that. So I am actually in a like 4-month block, and I've already renewed it for the next block because it's designed for a student. But that has now turned into the potential full-time job that I'm waiting on. So
Absolutely necessary. No, you can get a job without one. Is it harder to get a job without one? Yes. Are they hard to find for boot camp students? Yes, but more and more companies are opening up their internships. You just need to find a recruiter or a hiring manager and ask. I know the CBS internships would say like you must be enrolled in like such and such program because they never updated the language in the job postings. And it was up to the hiring manager if they wanted to take a boot camp student or not. Red Ventures, the company that they sold CNET to, does take boot camp students, and they have their own program to help train if that's a route you want to go. And I've been told that the Disney software engineering ones, at least in the org I am, will take boot camp students. So you just have to ask, find the right person to ask if they're open or not and what the requirements are.
Yeah, sorry.
Go for it, John.
Okay, cool. I can't remember the name of the company right now, but they work heavily like in partnership with Code Louisville, Virtual Peaker being one of them too. Again, since I won't say all, but the majority of the engineers at Code Louisville are actual active mentors for Code Louisville. And this has been a common theme throughout my time here, is that most mentors here are actively at companies that at some point are going to be trying to pull in some kind of interns, if not even junior or just regular positions. I say do not just limit yourself to internships. They are not necessarily needed. It's definitely like a shortcut into the door. Like for me, I got into Virtual Peaker as an internship, and then it was 90 days, just like your standard cohort at Louisville, and then it rolled over into a full-time position. So do they help? Absolutely, certainly, but they are not needed. In between, I recommend, if anything, besides internship, do like some kind of freelancing. Even after your first course, you got some kind of basic skills. Someone's going to need something basic made, or even what is it? When you push code to another repo on GitHub, I can't remember the
pull request.
Yes. Do those things. Just having that on your resume also helps, and it can jumpstart you past an internship altogether and just getting to an actual role. As far as like the difference between like a junior role and an internship, the only difference is your pay. At the end of the day, you're pretty much going to be doing more or less basic stuff, or if even at the company, it typically starts off internal and then broadens out. So hence my repetition on just at the end of the day, you're just getting proof on your resume that you can do what you say you do, more or less, which is why I say either do open source, collaborate, freelance. That's what I did for 3 years. I forgot to mention that, but do all those things together, and also reach out to your mentors in network. You have opportunities all around you. You just have to talk.
So you all covered every point that I was thinking about. So I guess I didn't need to chime in here. The only thing I'll just kind of emphasize is something Jake brought up that I wanted to talk about, which is when he mentioned speed school. Like traditionally, a lot of companies did tie their internships around 4-year degrees. And that was always unfortunate, but that is a trend that is changing. So fortunately, in Jake's case, it sounds like they're open to non-traditional students, basically meaning non-4-year degree students. And that is definitely something we're seeing more often. So there's internship programs out there, work and learns, apprenticeships. Bit 502 is one that I'm kind of involved with a little bit, and has it's a 2-year program where you earn an associate's degree, and several local employers are all starting to increase their internship pools. And part of that is a trend of more on the job training, and part of it is companies are having trouble finding people, so they're having to train them themselves. So yeah, definitely a growing area. But as everybody said, internship is not a requirement. We've had plenty of people that go straight into software development positions after participating in Code Louisville. So, this question I particularly like. So a high school teacher, Katie, is wondering what can she do to inspire her students to go into computer science and other technical fields, and to be prepared for that. And was there anything in particular that inspired you, a teacher or anything?
When I was in high school, MySpace was a thing, and HTML was fun at the time, and that kind of helped me work myself into the idea of computer science. I have had multiple teachers that have just been incredibly inspirational throughout high school that helped me kind of push me into where I am now. Any particular thing? Let me think about that.
When I have volunteered at the schools, I'm oh, now I can't even think of the name of the organization. Code.org. I'm a Code.org volunteer. And I go into the schools usually like the first week of December, and they do like the big hour of code week. And I work with the kids and show them like just cool projects that I've worked on, and talk to them about the tech involved and let them see some code. And depending on the age of the kids, we either pull up like code.org and they get into solving the puzzles, or sometimes they'll write some code on it. And then we talk about like the kind of fears that they have around it. Like a lot of them had the same misconception I had, or my teachers had, that there's a lot of like high level math involved. And there's not. It really depends on what you're programming. Your basic website is not using a lot of math. Now, if you're going into like Tesla and rocket science and stuff, there's going to be a ton of math in that. So maybe stay away from that. But yeah, so we just go over that and talk about like the fun stuff that we can build and the different text it uses, and they get to play around with it. And that seems to really inspire them and work.
Yeah, and on top of that, everyone, especially youth, they love games. So I recommend Scratch. It's a nice, simplified, educational friendly introduction into the basics of programming. I used it in my early days as well. I would also recommend. I repost that. There. It should be in the comment section, the Scratch link. I also recommend free code camp. I don't know if it's friendly enough for like middle schoolers or high school. Well, no, high schoolers, if they have like the interest, I believe it definitely would click in a lot more. But if like we're talking like young people, start with Scratch or something that's like, I see this like a common app. There's other apps out there that starts off with like these basic games, and like you drag and drop like the scripts, and they get to see it, and feel it. And if it clicks, you got yourself a young engineer. So.
And I on that, find things like, if you know your students pretty well, find things that they're interested in, because one of the things that is, I mean, just playing around with Poke API kept me and my ADHD engaged, because I just love Pokemon. I'm a huge nerd. Building a Discord bot right now, which is super cool. Just if they find an interest, find something that code can do to solve or fill that need.
Yeah, I showed some of the kids I was working with. It was a fashion designer who was using tech to integrate lights into dresses, and you could write certain code or run certain scripts, and the lights would light up a certain way and flash a certain way and make different designs. So I try to find like those unique ways that tech is being used to bring it into things that they're really into.
All right. What keeps you all motivated to code and learn new things?
Just interests. So I have been playing around with a lot of Node on my personal time, just because so little inside baseball, I'm a huge nerd. I play Pokemon Go still with a large group of friends, and we have a Discord that we were like, man, I wish that the Discord would do this, that, and the other thing, like coordinate raids or pull up like your trainer code and stuff like that. And I said, well, it can. You just need a Discord bot. And I said, well, hang on, I can do that. So finding things that interest me is it's hard to say motivated, because it's not actively motivating me. I'm not sitting there waking up and going, wake up, code. It's, I'm excited about this. I want to do it.
I like solving puzzles and problems. When there's a bug in the code, I feel like I'm like part of Mystery Inc. with Scooby-Doo, and I'm out here solving the mystery of why it's not working, and I get like super gratification when I make it work. I like playing with new tech. It's fun. I guess I like seeing what I can do with it, pushing it as far as I can push it. If there's another team at work that has an API, I will like tear into it and push it to its limits, and like, well, what else can it do? Can it do this? Can it do this? And it's fun to me. That's what keeps me motivated, I guess. I just enjoy it. And the money's pretty good too.
Yes. I if anything, hammering on that, my pay is, if anything, tripled since I became a software engineer. So, there's that. But at the end of the day, coding in itself is just another tool to solve problems. If you have something that you want to make, or that needs fixing, etc., code, you can do anything with it pretty much. I started off, taking random devices apart back in my age, and I just, I see applications, software, video games, all these things. I'm like, I'm curious how they did that. It just, at the end of the day, I just wanted to just make the things that I've seen, and like make, I want to help revolutionize the world, because tech is the future, and, it's a beautiful thing. But yeah, I compile errors in my sleep too. So, there's that too.
Another thing, just kind of bouncing off of that, is that you can also have a lot of fun breaking stuff, because the first two projects that I had at my current job were because I was poking around. I pulled the repo down and was looking at stuff, and I said, huh, this looks like you can send a duplicate and it'll absolutely just break everything. And it did. So my first project was fixing that. So if you enjoy, it's not necessarily, again, motivation, but QA is breaking stuff and handing it back to the dev and saying, fix this. And you're encouraged to do so, which is just wild to me.
All right. There's a few questions just generally about game development, but it seems like I've got to ask a couple in private messages as well. But I guess the first question is, what language might you suggest to somebody who wants to get into game development?
.NET.
.NET.
Yep.
C#.
Yeah, it easily gets you into video game programming, and it also is how we mod for Unity. So there's that.
Yeah, anything that's multi-threaded. So like Minecraft's built in Java, which is C# basically. JavaScript is usable in a lot of games in some aspects, but it is single threaded. So once you start having some like more complex stuff, it starts to kind of break down. So .NET.
Mhm. Oh,
Type of game you're wanting to build.
Yep.
Also that.
Yeah, like if you're wanting to work on like the Disney game site and work on the games for little kids, like that's JavaScript. If you're wanting to work on games that are running on Xbox or PlayStation, that's like .NET, C#. If you're wanting to do little games that are running on your phone, it could be JavaScript, it could be the native language. So that needs to be a deeper conversation. So like I said before, ask questions and find out more info.
Here's an interesting one. Does accessibility come into play in your day-to-day job? Do you all actively think about how to make your apps accessible?
Absolutely, because I work for a healthcare company, my apps have to be. And my best friend, which just found out that Shannon and I know, Jacob, his whole job right now as a senior software dev is accessibility in his Vue library, I believe.
Yep, same here. I went through Code Louisville during my .NET Python stuff. That's when I like seriously was already like deep diving into it. In my portfolio, I have like so many accessibility features inside there. Dev tools help. What's the word? They give you results to tell you how friendly your websites are and that such. But yes, accessibility is definitely a big thing, especially if you have a software that is actively being used, not just by like business owners, if you will, but like about actual citizens and stuff like that, which we do at Virtual Peaker.
In my current role, not as much because it's internal tools that's just being used by a few people. On a couple tools that get used by partners and vendors, yes, accessibility is huge because we don't know like what we're dealing with them. I try to make the tools that I'm building have some accessibility, but I don't have to cover all of it. But in previous jobs, yes, the websites had to be accessible. You had to hit all of it. The colors, the fonts, all of it.
Very cool. The next question is kind of boils down to imposter syndrome in general, but so specifically for you all seem to have some exposure to technology prior to Code Louisville, whether it was professional or just hobbyist. I guess what advice do you have for somebody that feels like they're struggling, where they're trying to go into a brand new career that they did not have that tech background? You know, what should they be thinking about? What challenges should they be pushing past? Any advice in that general area?
Yeah, first know that imposter syndrome never fully goes away. It will come and go throughout your career. You get a promotion and it's going to come back. You switch jobs and it's going to come back. You get a new project that you are super excited to work on, and then you get the details and it's going to come back. So you just have to learn how to manage it. And that's like asking questions, finding out the information that you need, talking to people, reminding yourself that you can code. Like go back, look at your GitHub, see how far you've come. That helps me a lot. That's why some of my projects are very like nasty looking, because they're a reminder of how far I've come.
I mean, it's the age old, just imagine them in their underwear, right? Like everyone has it. I am the only intern on a team of 4 senior engineers, and they're all doing this crazy PowerShell scripting stuff that when I first got in, I had no idea what was going on. Now I do. But when it came time to update the application that we're in charge of, none of them know Angular apparently. And that just blew me away that they just handed it off to me because they're like, you know it. And everyone experiences it. And these people that are just absolutely geniuses experience it. So you're going to experience it and it's okay.
Yeah,
And you're most likely geniuses too. So don't sell yourself short.
Just to hammer on to that is that at my company, we are transitioning from Angular JS to Vue, and we more or less have a council of 3 developers that pretty much live and breathe Vue. But all the senior devs prior to this transition, they only know Angular, all the other, business logic and stuff, but they don't know nothing about this new structure, so they don't feel confident in it, so they pass it on to us to take care of it. Even with me, finally getting into the position, it still hits. It never goes away.
Is there any particular experience where you felt like you just were not wrapping your head around whatever the topic was, just completely lost? And if so, what was that, and what did you do to get past that, or did you?
Video. Like people will start throwing terms at me, like the encoding thing and the codecs and multi CDN switching and transmuxing, and I'm just like, I can make a play button work. So yeah, so I signed up for a course that they offered that goes over like the whole video process, from when you record it to how the video gets to the computer, to then what happens to it all throughout the process till it gets to a user. And then we started mentor circles, and the guy who wrote the HLS spec with Apple is mentoring one of the circles. And I was the first person to sign up and made sure I signed up. And then I told everybody else about it to sign up, because I know that is going to be very useful and help me. So seeking out information and asking a bunch of questions and finding the people with the answers and picking their brains can really help.
Unit testing. It was something that I just could not wrap my head around. It should be describe, execute, to be. Like, what do you mean? This is just words. And it was a struggle for me for a large portion of my interviews. So what I ended up doing was I built a project or two that would not compile unless the unit tests pass. So I made myself learn it.
As for me, JavaScript I did not like it. Nope, not for a whole 2 years. I didn't like it. It made me sad, depressed, angry, sometimes happy when you finally get it to like run, but that was pretty much it. It'll break again. What did I do? I studied. I got Humble Bundle books. Definitely found a lot of developers on YouTube. Even courses on what is it, Udacity, I think.
Udemy.
Thank you. Yes, Udemy. Thank you. I took courses on those, and eventually, it now clicks. Like I live in it. I live and breathe it. But just don't give up. You'll go through the cycle. But the objective is to overcome your weaknesses. If you know what you're weak at, study it, perfect it, more or less. Don't let it hinder you, because down the line, it can eventually become like a make or break, for you in your career, depending on where you are. So don't let it.
Yeah. And sometimes it's the instructor teaching the course and not you. Like, I watched plenty of Treehouse videos and was just like, I don't understand at all what this person is talking about. And then find a video on YouTube or Udacity or Udemy on the same concept, and it was just taught in a different way. I was like, oh, now that makes sense. So it really might not be you. It could just be the person teaching it isn't doing a very good job.
And if you have a question, a million people have had a question. The coolest thing that I learned day one of my job is, if I have a question, search it in Slack, because it'll most likely pop up and someone already asked the question, or someone's name popped up that you can ping and say, hey, how'd you end up solving this?
All right, we've got just a few short minutes left. I think I've managed to get to everybody's question, but if I missed it or if I butchered it in translating it, please feel free to post it now. We can get another question or two in before we call it a night. Or feel free to unmute yourself if you just want to ask verbally. Oh, looks like this one just came in the chat a minute ago. For those that are more introverted, how might I go about opening up? Networking seems very important in this industry.
Networking is very important in this industry. Start on LinkedIn. It's easy to go on LinkedIn, make a post, make some connections, comment on somebody else's post. You don't have that face-to-face pressure of interacting with people. And that's a great way to at least start getting some tech questions out there and start having those conversations. And then when you go to a meetup, if you ever make it to one in person again, if those really become things again, then you'll have that experience having those technical conversations and you can talk to people and ease into it that way.
Little known fact about me is that I am an introvert. And one of the things that I loved doing last month and then last year was my first Hacktoberfest. Contributing to open source projects on GitHub is entirely done through text chat. You don't have to interact with anyone, or not face to face. You can do it on your own time. So kind of adapting to what works for you. So something like that.
Yeah, same here. I'm actually doing, this panel not only to, give back to Louisville, but it's to help me improve my ability to speak in front of people more or less. But, I posted in the comments, but if I can get here, I'm pretty sure the majority of all of you guys can easily get into this as well, with or without having to socialize. Really depends on the company and the team you're applying for, but more or less, I think in most cases, most developers I know are actually introverted. You just have to be able to speak more or less when necessary and be able to collaborate and yeah.
Yeah, in my experience, most tech people are generally more introverted than extroverted, and are just happy that somebody else may have started a conversation. So. All right. Any last questions anybody has? Mike, I was reading your question, but I'm not sure I understand it. So if you want to clarify that, you can.
I pinged him with one. If you just go into Discord and search code or JavaScript or something like that, a few will pop up.
I'm not a heavy Discord user, so yeah, may lost something there, not using it much. Alrighty, well, so that's going to wrap us up for tonight. So I want to thank Shannon, Jake, and Sean for joining us. I know the crowd thanks you as well. We appreciate all the advice and everything. If y'all are open to it, could you share a contact or LinkedIn or something like that? I should have given you a prompt earlier for that, so you don't have to find it on the spot. But any way to get in touch with you or network with you. And all three of them are on the Code Louisville Slack as well. And for our Code Kentucky friends, if you're not in Code Louisville Slack, we can get you in touch with them as well if you need, if you have a follow-up question or something. But yeah, so if anybody has any talks like this that they might be interested in, or presentations or something, just let me know what you're interested in, because I'm looking for some ideas about who to seek out some speakers for a future Tech Foundations. So yeah, that wraps us up for tonight. And thank you all very much for coming, everybody. And hope everybody learned something tonight. Good night, everyone.
Thank you for having us. Yeah.